morning, our opening hymn is number 300, With Heart and Mind, in the gray hymnal. Please rise as you're willing and able. Good morning. We bid you welcome. We do not ask what you believe or expect you to think a certain way, but only that you try to live a kindly, helpful life with the dignity proper to a human being. Welcome all who believe that religion is wider than any sect and deeper than any set of opinions. Welcome all who might find in our friendship strength and encouragement for daily living. Thank you for spending your Sunday morning with us, whether enjoying the service in person or watching online. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors today. After the service, we invite you to stay for coffee and conversation downstairs in our reception hall. We also have a little book display set up again from last week, so please peruse that. Joys and sorrows will be shared later in the service. You can come to the microphone then or text your joy or sorrow to the phone number listed on page 2 of the order of service. Please take a moment now to silence your phones, but don't turn them off. We encourage you to share on social media that you're attending today's service. We have announcements first today. I have one from Barb Eglinton. If you are missing a pair of readers from last night, she accidentally came home with 2. So see her after service for that. And while people are coming up, I'm going to do the social justice announcements. Today's collection, you will see an envelope in your order of service for PEN America. PEN America is an organization that's over 100 years old. They've been working all that time with international PEN groups to ensure freedom of expression around the world. In the last few years, they've been focused more and more on the United States. So a worthy organization. You'll also see that this is new since I believe last month. There's a QR code on the envelope. So if you don't have cash or check with you, you can just point your phone at it, go right to their website, and donate that way. If you so choose, write the number that you donated on the envelope so we have an idea of how much, but don't feel the need to do that. The other thing is that we have social justice is very busy this month, I apologize. We have 2 other things that we're asking for this month. One is A Girl Like Me is a local organization that is collecting, they support teen parents in the city of Detroit. It's a 501c3, it's a great organization. They're having a Christmas party for 100 kids in the families that they support. And we're asking you to help us buy the toys for that. So there's a QR code on the bulletin board downstairs. And after service for the next couple weeks, we'll be set up at a table to help you if you would like to buy from their Amazon list, easy peasy. You don't have to do anything, it goes straight there. If you would like to buy toys and bring them here, that's obviously great too, we'll deliver them. And the third thing is the thing that popped up that we weren't expecting. They're expecting another baby at Freedom House. So we are going to do a shower again at the beginning of December. Same table the next couple of Sundays. You obviously are welcome to bring in baby gifts. All are appreciated, but we will also have some to sell to you. Libby does a great job of picking out things that they need, and then you can just buy them from her, and we will deliver them, and again, easy peasy. So next announcement.
Morning, everyone. I'm Jill Daly, chair of the Daytimers, and it's the third Thursday, and it's Daytimers, which meets at 12 o'clock. You bring your lunch and beverage, and everybody gets a chance to talk, and we socialize, and we're always delighted to have any new members. Just come in and see if you like it, and everybody gets a chance to talk, so please feel free to join us.
Hi, Katie Coker. I am here with publicity today, not Ari. If you took pictures at last night's auction, we announced this, Mark said it last night, but some of you might not remember. If you could send your pictures to publicity@uufarmington.org so that we can use those on social media and on the website, that would be great. That's just publicity@uufarmington.org, and James and Liz and I will get those. So, thank you.
Good morning. From membership, just three quick things. Chalice circles, which are kind of small discussion groups, maybe 8, 10 of us get together on a given topic. It's moderated so that we keep on track. We have our next one this Tuesday night. You can come here in person. You can do it by Zoom. Linda Brown is moderating this one. The topic is after the vote. So try to be there. It'll be fun. It's going to be in the meeting hall. Second, you and you for our newer members, guests, people who might be thinking about becoming members. Round 2 is next week, right after church, noon. Here, lasts about 75 minutes. Hope to see you there. And third, Thanksgiving dinner. We started this up again last year. For those of us who don't particularly have something better to do with Thanksgiving, might like to celebrate with some people, we'll be here. Memberships provided the meat. It's potluck. If you don't have anything to bring, just bring yourselves. And just let me know so we know how much we eat together. Thanks.
Good morning. Good morning. Testing. That's why he's up here.
Okay,
There you go.
we're live. Karen here from the fundraising committee, and I just want to give everyone a big thank you for a successful, over the top, best auction in numbers we have ever had, and I think in attendance it was awesome, awesome, awesome. And so I have some preliminary figures here from Tom. We did about 20,500 all said and done, less some expenses, so that's pretty cool. And the committee baskets did great too, so if you have a committee and you want to check with me, I can give you the numbers. But thank you again. It takes a team, it takes a family to make this happen, and you're awesome. Thanks.
And thank you, Auction Committee. Please check the UUCF website or emails for other announcements about upcoming events.
Our chalice lighting reading this morning is from the Reverend Julie Conradi. She writes, "We light this chalice remembering the freedoms long established in our nation. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom from the establishment of religion. We light this chalice honoring those who exemplify protecting those freedoms. Librarians, booksellers, teachers, authors, readers. We light this chalice so that by its light we may read all the books, books with archaic language, books with offensive material, books which affirm the diversity of the human race, books which normalize our varied sexualities, books which share multi-dimensional perspectives of history. May we bask in the glow of its light this morning as we illuminate, brighten, and radiate because of the books we have read and the books we have yet to read. Let us join together in reciting our UUCF mission statement, which is in your order of service. We seek answers everywhere, include everyone, and live with compassion. Let us take our communal energy from last night and all of our energy from this morning into our own space and minds here together for a spirit of meditation and prayer. If you could notice how you're holding your body and shift it into a more comfortable position for you, for whatever that means. Maybe that means putting your feet on the floor, moving your shoulders a little bit, bringing yourself into this space. Notice your breathing. Notice your heartbeat. Bring your attention to this time and place, right here. And let us hold a moment of silence together. Today, I am sharing with you a prayer from the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Savage. She writes, Spirit of life, eternal, beloved of mystery and grace, God of our spirits and our hearts, receive our prayer. We come before that which is greater than ourselves in gratitude for the fullness of our lives, for the anguish and grief that informs our mission to side with love again and again, for the suffering and disenfranchisement of people that foments our passion for justice and wholeness, for complex lives, for hard lives, full and overwhelmed lives. We give thanks for the blessings that we have been given, the reassurance of community, the steady warmth of hope, and the unwavering faith that there will be better days. We give thanks and seek your grace. Spirit of love, come alongside with all the holy nudges that we need, so we may live in such a way that we celebrate all the blessings that we have been given, seen and unseen, so we may be the blessings in the world. Amen. Thank you to our wonderful choir, Diana, Terry, all of the work that is put into bringing joy and music to our community. And there is always space for you if you would like to join them. The choir meets on Monday evenings. That is another way that we share generosity here, by bringing our whole selves and sharing of who we are. So this morning, as we talk about banned books, is also a kind of a follow-up to last Sunday's banned books party, that I would like you to kind of like walk down some memory lane with me in your own life. So we're going to think about how books have impacted our lives. When Marie and I began planning today's service, I remembered back to the very early days of learning to read and the all-important library card that opened up days of learning. Do you all remember the first time you got a library card? Even when Michelle and I first moved here, since we knew like we want to stay in such a beautiful space, once we established residency, we went and got our own library cards. And we love the library system here. It's very nice. Every week, my mother took myself and my siblings once a week to the library that was just a few blocks away from where we lived. And we would go in and we could check out any books that were in the children's section. You remember those days? I don't know how it is now, but a long time ago, the kids could only check out books that were in their part of the world. And you had to get permission from your parents to get something that they thought might be a little too mature for you. And it was always like crossing this milestone of, oh, I'm now in the adult section or the young adult section, because now you've like been open to even more wonders of what is out there that I have not yet quite seen. My mother, she made time every day for us to sit down and read our books. This was, of course, long before screens existed, and so this was a very important time, I'm sure, for her as well, for us to sit down, and this is our book reading time. Well, it sounds like an idyllic childhood due to regular trips, library trips. In actuality, those books gave me a way to experience being in a safer, more imaginative life. Although my childhood was overall very chaotic, regular reading and access to other ways of understanding the world helped me to have strength and resilience when I needed it most. The other day, I was talking with a friend, and she even told me about a time in her life when she was very ill, and that she was in the hospital for over a month, and her mother brought her books, and the ways that books have impacted us and brought us a source of comfort when we needed that most. That memory helped to give me an insight, I think, and I try when I know that there are people who are acting in ways that are contrary to how I believe, one of my spiritual beliefs is I try to understand what is it that is driving this person. And it can be hard because you have to like dig deep. I wonder what this is about. But this memory helped me give an insight into why it is when we, people who don't believe in banning books, we internally cringe and we are horrified when we hear about banning books of any kind. On a psyche level, we remember the joy and support that books brought. Just the idea of removing that potential from other people, it makes us just so, like, what do you mean? We just become apoplectic. Like, what are you talking about? This idea of removing things from other people that could actually be a source of support. We remember that these books brought us so much information. There's this way of how an author who has written about something that maybe we've experienced in our lives. Maybe they've talked about a grief that they experienced. Maybe they've talked about an emotional problem that they've had or some kind of health concern. Somebody sharing their vulnerability makes so much sense for us because all of a sudden we feel less alone. Whatever that is, we know that they have experienced that too. And it gives us a lifeline for how we can make a difference and we can keep going. Sometimes that author, sometimes that writing is what keeps us experiencing life right now. So I wonder if you can remember a book that made a difference in your life. Was it fiction or nonfiction, a biography, a memoir, or an autobiography? Was it, if you're like some, I loved the one event being offered, the Nerdganza. Was it a reference book, perhaps, or a book of history? What was it that made a difference to you, that makes you remember a time and place in your life? We're going to take a couple of seconds for you to just think on that. The book that impacted who you are today. It could be a friend, it could be someone you just met, but how could you tell someone about this book? Do you think they might even be surprised about this particular book? Have you told anybody else about this book that meant something to you? What about that book that made such a difference to you? Perhaps that is something that you could continue to articulate for yourself. For me, it's the book, The Fifth Sacred Thing by Starhawk. The Fifth Sacred Thing tells a dystopian story about people who created intentional community. They are continuously reminding themselves of their values, and they are challenged to live by them even when horrible things happened to them. I read this book in the 90s, and it was even when I was still in the early stages of thinking about, like, how do I want to live my life? And I think that we are always on that kind of thinking. That book made such an impact on me that when a former partner and I contemplated changing our names, when this was long before marriage became even legal for same-sex couples, then we chose the name Madrone. Madrone is one of the main characters in the book. I decided that I wanted to live my life with the openness and caring that Madrone did. Even when it's hard, especially when I get frustrated at myself and, yes, others, I try to go back to the example of Madrone, who said to people who even hurt them, even now, this is one of my most favorite parts of the book. This horrible things kept happening. One person kept committing atrocities, and she sat with him and remembered places of healing in her life, places of hurt in her life, and said to him, even now, there is still a place for you at our table. The author Starhawk changed my life. You probably didn't change your name to a character from a fictional book, but I feel confident that you too have been changed by a book. And having told you that, I have a confession. The years since I graduated from seminary in 2019, I have actually had a hard time getting back into the joy of reading just for its own sake. During seminary, like most academic programs, reading became a means to an end, not something to enjoy for its own sake. The last few months, especially, being kind of more settled down and grounded in this place, I'm noticing that I've been missing reading. I notice the part of my brain that tells me I should be doing something else. Do you ever have that? When you're wanting to do something, but your brain is like, those dishes are over there, those emails need to be responded to. So your brain tells you, or my brain tells me, that, oh, it's not that important. Is reading this book really that important? Well, I submit to you that it actually is. There is always going to be other things to do. The part of my psyche that is ruled by the need to be productive, whatever that means, has a hard time just slowing down and being present. But I submit to you that even reading even a fiction book of whatever kind is still a spiritual practice because it allows you to just be in that moment. I don't know exactly how I'm going to break that cycle, but what I do know is that thinking about the book bans gives me clarity about the importance of reestablishing a regular habit of daily reading, just like my mother instilled in us a long time ago. We need to read books of all kinds, even and especially those that appall us and make us uncomfortable. And I'm sure you all know, without me having to go into a lot of detail, that Unitarian Universalism will never, ever, ever be on the side of banning books. You know that. Even books that are clearly against our values will never be banned by UUs. We will never be the people saying we don't like this book and it should cease to exist. Last week at the UU and U class, one of the things that came up in conversation is that there is this wrong idea out in the world that UUs believe and support everything, that anything goes here. That is not a correct idea. We know that that isn't actually true. It is a myth that is said by people who don't really understand what we believe. What we don't support is fundamentalism, a one-way-fits-all view of spirituality. That way does not work here. In that same vein, we are also people who don't tell others what they should and should not read. We don't take away others' ability to read something that makes a difference to their lives. It is anathema to our very beings to say that others, whoever they are, should not have access to life-giving information. Whether it is books by people who have experienced maybe other mental health issues like us, life struggles, or things we do not understand ourselves, we know that reading gives, in the words of our 12-step communities, experience, strength, and hope. We are never on the side of taking away that hope for others. So now I want you to go back and think again about that book that you brought to mind, the one that made such an impact on your life. Now imagine yourself defending the right to read that book. We can all do that together using the collective strength of our community and much beyond, with all of our communities working together, we can do that. And now some of you received slips of paper that are quotes about banned books, and some of you from last week had quotes. So we would like you to come up and read those quotes into the microphone up here. You can just come up and line up. And to that microphone. Yes.
Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. George Orwell, 1984.
Many great authors create words. Grace Metalius, American author, created the expression patent place. My author was trying to wipe out a word. His name was Mark Twain. I won't use the word, I'll use the word Negro, which means the same thing. Huckleberry Finn says, so I was full of trouble, full as I could be, and I didn't know what to do. At last, I had no idea, and I'd go and write a letter. So he writes a letter to Miss Watson, admitting that he had sailed down the Mississippi River with Jim, but he was going to go to hell because he helped the slave escape. So Huckleberry Finn finally decides. He writes the letter, he tears it up, and he says, it was a close place. I took it up, held it up in my hand. I was terrified because I got to decide forever between two things. I noted. I studied it a minute, and holding it in my breath, I said to myself, all right then, I'll go to hell.
Reading develops cognitive skills. It trains our minds to think critically and to question what you are told. This is why dictators censor or ban books. It's why it was illegal to teach slaves to read. It's why girls in developing countries have acid thrown in their faces when they walk to school. Karen Slaughter.
Books with heavy topics are not going to harm children. Children still have to exist in a world full of these heavy topics and are going to be affected by them whether they read the book or not. Having a book, though, gives them the tools, the language, the resources, and the education so that when they are having to deal with a heavy topic, they have a roadmap for how to handle it. George M. Johnson.
This comes from Alfred Whitney Griswold. It says, books won't stay banned. They won't burn. Ideas won't go to jail.
From Persepolis, The Story of Childhood by Marjane Satrapi. I had learned that you always should shout louder than your aggressor. I have a couple quotes from To Kill a Mockingbird. The first one is, I wanted you to see what real courage is. Instead of getting the idea that courage is a man with a gun in his hand, it's when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin it anyway, and you see it through no matter what. The second one is from To Kill a Mockingbird as well. As you grow older, you'll see white men cheat black men every day of your life. But let me tell you something, and don't you forget it. Whenever a white man does that to a black man, no matter who he is, how rich he is, or how fine a family he comes from, that white man is trash.
This is a quote from Stephen Chbosky, who wrote a coming-of-age book called The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Banning books gives us silence when we need speech, closes our ears when we need to listen. It makes us blind when we need to see.
The thought that leads me to contemplate with dread the erasure of other voices, of unwritten novels, poems whispered or swallowed for fear of being overheard by the wrong people, outlawed languages flourishing in underground essayists, questions challenging authority never being posed, unstaged plays, canceled films. That thought is a nightmare, as though a whole universe is being described in invisible ink. Toni Morrison.
Thank you all. I was a weird, bookish child. My note says to pause for shocked gasps. I still have every book I owned as a child, and that's not as impressive as it sounds because I come from a very non-bookish family. I have a little set or a partial set of the books they used to sell in the grocery stores. Like the first one was 99 cents, and then you paid more for each. And the titles like Insects Do the Strangest Things. I have a copy of 60 Saints for Girls that I got for my first communion. And the best one of them is Snow Treasure. It's a story about Norwegian children who hide gold on their sleds and sled out under the noses of the Nazis and save the gold. It's a great book. I also, like Reverend Karen, had the great good fortune to own a library card and have access to the lovingly curated libraries of my teachers. I got almost all of my reading material from them, and it was a lot. Snow Treasure was a hand-me-down from my 4th grade teacher, and I still don't know if it was really too tattered to stay in her library box or if she just knew how much I'd love it. And in 5th grade, Jean, if you're watching, my 5th grade teacher, thank you for introducing me to Harriet the Spy and to Meg and the Tesseract. Those are both heavily banned books and have been since they were published. Independent, smart girls who didn't back down. I read anything and everything I could get my hands on. In times of book drought, I actually read that little stack over and over again between other books. And as you all know, I am not an entomologist, nor am I a saint. But what I did learn from all that reading is much more important, and it's what we all learn from reading from the stories we share. First of all, there's a great big world out there. It's full of interesting, exciting people and places and things, and I will never live long enough to learn about them all, but the fun is in the trying. Second, inside every person in that great big world out there is another world, and it's full of thoughts and questions and contradictions and the capacity for both great good and great evil. And I'll probably never fully understand the world in here, and I'll certainly never fully understand the world inside anyone else. But again, the fun is in the trying. And that's why books and other forms of expression are banned, because they're powerful. They connect us. We are a species that evolved to survive by working together, to be in societies. And storytelling is the first and most potent tool of forming societies. It's what binds us. And if you want power and you want to control people, the first thing you do is you break those connections, right? So, in the words of the one off-band author, Aldous Huxley, the propagandist's purpose is to make one set of people forget that other sets of people are fully human. Diana, as always, has chosen beautiful music for this service, and a couple of the pieces she chose remind us of what we're capable of when we fail to recognize the full humanity of others. She chose a couple pieces that bring back the Holocaust. If you think, though, that book banning and dehumanizing people, other people, are things that only happen in other places and other times, I'm sorry to tell you that you've fallen into the trap of thinking that we are not all fully human. We are all capable of great good and great evil, and that doesn't change even though times and places do. And now a little history, because history doesn't repeat itself, but it does often rhyme. You can check out the timeline banner in Adams Hall if you'd like for more times and dates and things that have happened in book banning history. But I want to talk to you a little bit about how we got to where we are in the United States today. From the very beginnings of the formations of this country, before we were a country, the most widespread form of book banning was making it illegal to teach enslaved people to read. That's a shame and a curse that we still have not recovered from or made right. In the years of Jim Crow, Black people could not get library cards or access to libraries designated for white people, and today there are still huge, huge disparities in school and library access. Moving forward a little bit, you may have heard of the Comstock laws. These laws are named after Anthony Comstock, who was an evangelical Christian in the late 1800s. And with a small group of again it rhymes, with a small group of like-minded friends, he convinced Congress in 1873 to pass, it's got a long name, the Bill for the Suppression of Trade in and Circulation of Obscene Literature and Articles of Immoral Use. This is an amendment to the U.S. Postal Code, and it was the first federal bill intended to block things from the U.S. mail, anything related to sex, including erotic books and pictures, contraceptives, means of producing abortion, and any information about birth control was deemed immoral and obscene and could not be sent through the mail. People were prosecuted under this law. Most states followed the federal law and made their own state laws similarly, and then later the federal government made even possession of these materials illegal. During the years that the laws were enforced in the United States, millions of books, magazines, newspapers, and other items were seized and destroyed, including newspapers with ads in them for anything related to sex or reproduction, and medical textbooks with pictures of reproductive anatomy in them. Right. More than 3,000 people were arrested, and they collectively served over 600 years in prison. Many of them were prosecuted for writing about atheism, feminism, homosexuality, or sexual health. Books like Radcliffe Hall's Well of Loneliness were not allowed into the country by customs officials. And in 1927, Eve Adams was deported for publishing a book of lesbian stories and poems. Eve Adams, after she was deported, later died in Auschwitz. In the 1950s, Playboy magazine began to be published, and at about the same time, there were a number of magazines, but one called Physique Pictorial was a magazine that showed less scantily clad men in bodybuilder poses. Any guesses which one was repeatedly charged as obscene? Even materials that mention homosexuality, no pictures, no descriptions, just gay characters, were prosecuted throughout the 1950s. The first gay rights cases that were brought to the United States Supreme Court were both obscenity cases in 1959 and 1962. We have no idea how many things didn't get written or studied because of the fear of prosecution. We don't know what wasn't even created. And we have no way of knowing how many lives were ruined or how many women died because of lack of access to reproductive information and care under these laws. In the 1970s and 80s, we had efforts led by Anita Bryant and Jerry Falwell, respectively, to limit information about LGBTQ+ people and issues. In the late 1980s, the Helms Amendments went so far as to prohibit the use of funds by the CDC to provide, quote, AIDS education, information, or prevention materials and activities that promote or encourage, directly or indirectly, homosexual sexual activities. They prohibited the CDC from telling people how not get AIDS. And again, we have no idea how many people whose lives could have been saved. The Comstock Acts are still in the books, but both federally and in most states, but they haven't been enforced for most of the past 50 years. Today, since the Dobbs decision, there are groups very similar to Anthony Comstock's who are pushing to resurrect the Comstock laws in order to punish those who share information about or medications for abortion. That is, they are trying to bring those laws back up. And that brings us to today. Once again, we're faced with a small but extremely loud minority, bent on imposing their beliefs and fears on the rest of us. The current push follows the Tea Party model, bringing agitators into school board meetings and library board meetings and pretending to be concerned parents. When you hear that these are concerned parents, they are not. They are outside agitators. Moms for Liberty is the most visible of these groups. It was founded in Florida in 2021. Its nationwide chapters fight what they consider, they say, woke indoctrination of children by advocating for book bans in school libraries, endorsing candidates for public office who align with their views. They also use their social media platforms to target teachers and school officials, threatening them. They advocate for the abolition of the Department of Education, advance a conspiracy propaganda, and spread hateful imagery and rhetoric against the LGBTQ community. Recently, 2 members of Moms for Liberty actually went to the police station to report several school librarians to law enforcement, demanding that they be arrested for distributing pornography. It was a YA novel to children. It's a serious escalation of their tactics, and it's a clear threat. They're threatening people. And what happens when you threaten people? They begin to comply. They're afraid, right? You're threatening my family, you're threatening my livelihood. I will start to comply whether I want to or not. One piece of evidence for this is that last month, Popular Information reported that the Scholastic Book Company, the largest purveyor of children's books in the country, has moved all of their diverse books, all of their books that contain LGBTQ+ characters or people of color, into a special collection. And you have to explicitly ask for that collection to have it in your book sales. Otherwise, they'll send you everything else. Right? It was reported in the news, it was picked up by major media, and there was backlash. So Scholastic has said, well, we're revisiting that, but they haven't actually offered a revision to that yet. Two of the things included in that book of diverse books were children's biographies of Ketanji Jackson Brown and John Lewis. I mean, this is what they want to keep out of the schools. We live in scary times. What can we do? We can do a lot. The first and most important thing is to not give up. Don't give up hope, and don't give up the fight. This week, on Tuesday, voters across the country made very clear in local races, and I am so pleased to report this, that hate groups have no place in their school boards. People actually went out and voted in school board races, and that's one thing right there, right? Candidates publicly endorsed by conservative groups such as Moms for Liberty and the 1776 Project lost about 70% of their races. I saw returns from places where people were saying nobody's ever voted for a Democrat in my county in forever, and they're all on the school board now. It's crazy. So don't let anyone tell you that we're a divided country. We are not a divided country. There is a small vocal group of people who would like us to be divided, but we are not. Most of us want all the good things for our children, our communities, and our world. On the book table in Adams Hall is a stack of sheets, look like this. It's a list of things that you can do. There's a lot of things you can do. Pick one up, and if you do some of them and check it off on the sheet and bring it back, we'll give you prizes. And if you don't bring it back and we don't give you prizes, you'll still have that warm feeling in your heart of having done some things. You can read banned books. That's right there at the top. Find out, there's a list, actually there's a link to a list of what books are currently being banned. It's about 2,000 this year alone throughout the country. 2,000 independent titles, more places, so lots more books. Buy them. Borrow them from the library. Borrowing books from the library shows what we're interested in. So it's just as important to borrow them as to buy them. Make sure that the libraries know what you want. Go to a school board meeting just to be there to listen. And if it comes up, be there to say, or get up and say, this is important to you. You want to make sure that they're actually supporting real learning in the schools. Thank a teacher or librarian. It's not on the list, but it should be. Teachers and librarians are the heroes who are working in the trenches to make books available, to defend intellectual freedom, and help the kids who, like me, desperately needed the support and comfort of a really good book. And most importantly, you can and you must wholeheartedly embrace humanity, both your own and that of every single other person. Share stories, explore your worlds, both internal and external, and amplify the voices of the unheard and misrepresented. We are all richer for them. Thank you. And now the service leader steps up and moves to joys and sorrows. A perfect heart is one that has known love and loss, joy and sorrow. The perfect heart is one that has been shared. As joys and sorrows of our community are shared, please direct your energy, prayers, and meditations as a gift of compassion and strength. I will look and see if anybody has one up here. Otherwise, please do come up. iPad, so we light 3 candles for the intentions that rest in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. one for the joys, one for the sorrows, and one for the strength of the gathered community that can support you and bring you peace. Now for the offertory, we have a reading As a Fire Exists by Burning by John Saxon. This religious community exists by its mission as a fire exists by burning, but a fire cannot burn without fuel. And it is the time, the energy, the imagination, the vision, the creativity, the compassion, the love, and the financial support of the members and friends of this community that fuels our mission to nurture and sustain a welcoming, inclusive, and diverse liberal religious community that transforms lives and serves the world. Your support, the free and generous support of each and every member and friend of this community, is what fuels this community and its mission, and without your support, the flame of justice, community, and love cannot burn brightly to warm ourselves and be a beacon in a world threatened by division and fear. The last hymn we'll sing today is one of my favorites, Die Gedanken sind frei. This song is hundreds of years old and has served in its various forms through those years as a protest song all the way. And my favorite verse is this one, and yes, I'm going to make you listen in German. Und sperrt man mich ein im finsteren Kerker, das alles sind rein vergebliche Werke, denn meine Gedanken zerreißen die Schranken und Mauern entzwei, die Gedanken sind frei. And if I am thrown into the darkest dungeon, it doesn't matter, because my thoughts break through all gates and walls. My thoughts are free. Popular in the 1800s, this song was banned after the failed revolution of 1848. Later, in 1935, when the guards at the Lichtenberg concentration camp ordered prisoners to put on a show in celebration of Hitler's birthday, an imprisoned lawyer, Hans Litten, recited Die Gedanken sind frei in the show. And in 1942, Sophie Scholl, a member of the White Rose resistance group in Munich, played the song on her flute outside the walls of the prison where her father Robert had been detained for criticizing Hitler. Please stand as you're willing and able to join me in reminding ourselves of our power by singing number 291 in the gray hymnal, Die Gedanken sind frei.
Scholar can map them, no hunter can trap
benediction. We are one across time and space, and we are loved. May we always promote, celebrate, and protect freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Let us keep our minds and our hearts free to what we do not yet know. Amen.